Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Redeem Her Time podcast. I'm excited about this conversation that we get to have today about how to improve your marriage with zero added time. Yes, zero added time, but maximum impact. And let me just say that doesn't mean you shouldn't be investing time in your marriage, but there are ways that we can get a better roadie with the time we're already investing, right? And so I'm excited to have this conversation. So, Micaiah, thank you so much for joining us today. Just let's start off. Tell us about you. What are you juggling just in this season of life?
Okay. Well, first, I just want to say this because I feel like you'd be mad if I didn't correct you. It's Micaiah.
Thank you.
Okay. I know people mess it up. It doesn't offend me, but I've had people like be upset if I just let them keep saying it wrong. So,
I get it all the time. I get called Lisa, so Micaiah. Yes, Micaiah, welcome to the podcast. Tell us all about you.
yeah, thank you. Um, so I had a I have a very strange testimony. Like, I didn't have a traditional, like, grow up, have your dream wedding, get married, have kids type of story. Um, I had a very traumatic childhood, was in foster care for 2 years for about age 5 to 7, and then was adopted kind of back into my family, but it still wasn't a very great environment. There were some ups and downs and some more traumatic things that occurred. And so I left home at 17, and then I got pregnant. And then I had always been a Christian my pretty much my entire life. The earlier ages, obviously, I didn't know very much, but was still slightly involved in the church. But I really like got baptized and like really was serious about it around age 8. But then during all of those traumatic things that happened in my teenage years, I feel like I kind of got like angry at God, wandered away, and then came back to Him and was kind of struggling with some things. I'd been very pulled into current modern world ideologies and the lies that were being spewed at me in the school system and social media and all of these things I was hearing in TV shows. And so it was a gradual back to the Lord moment, and my family wasn't super involved in the church, so I was kind of alone in it. Like I was the only one going. My mom was just dropping me off, and it was a lonely season for a long time. And then when I found out I was pregnant, and I was just feeling the most alone, right? Like super excluded from my family. I wasn't even being invited to like birthdays or holidays at this point. Just struggling to get by. And so I just cried out to God. And it was like that was my biggest surrender moment that I've ever had. And at this point, I had no idea what was going to happen. I was 17, so I was like, God, how am I going to do this? Like, I can't do this without you. And my now husband answered so many of those prayers. I mean, like, he was also just 17, and so it was a very, could go either way type of moment. Like, I didn't know what was going to happen. And I was extremely sick. My first pregnancy was not a good one. I was hardly eating at this point because I was living on my own. So I was probably having about one meal a day. I had lost a ton of weight. I was probably very nutritionally depleted. And I was trying to finish getting through school. I was doing my high school online, but I was doing Career Center in our area is what it's called, but it's like additional like job skills type of thing. So I was in the cosmetology section of that, getting my cosmetology schooling so that I could go get my license, which meant I was there till from like 11:30 to 6:30, Monday through Friday, and then doing my schoolwork on the computer in the mornings or the nights. So I was just squeezing in work where I could. So I was like scraping by. And so I ended up graduating. He ended up moving in. And, obviously I knew we were living in sin and I didn't love that. But I also was like, how do I like rush this, this guy who's still just a kid with me, like to get married? Like, how do I help him see the importance of that? Because he also had a very gradual, like coming back to God time frame. Like I knew it wasn't something I could push. And so again, I just resorted to prayer. And I'm a big journaler. I love journaling. And so I would journal Every time that I had a very low moment, and I tried to make it a regular thing too, like a daily habit, but it didn't always stick back then. I wasn't very organized. So, um, in that process, we both slowly got, I had been in church, but we both have very different church backgrounds, right? So we had these things, we had a lot of similarities in like going through trauma and like struggling through life. But we had very different church backgrounds, so we didn't always agree on like the church setting or the type of church. And so that was kind of a barrier. But through that, we slowly both found our way closer and closer to Jesus, and that brought us closer together. And it was after we had our daughter, my husband's father came down because he lived about an hour from us to meet her. She was probably 2, 3 days old, and he had a conversation with us about how, if we're going to take this seriously, then we need to get married and like we shouldn't be living in sin. And it was hilarious because it was everything that I had told my husband. Like I had been telling him this for months, like trying to prepare him that like this is something we're going to have to do. Like you need to start thinking about this. And he had always kind of brushed off the conversation, or like I could tell it really stressed him out because his parents also got young, married young, and that didn't end well. So, it was kind of like a hesitation for him. But his dad came down and said it all to him. And, you can hear the same thing, but like hearing it from different people, just sometimes it's dramatically different. And so I guess hearing it from his dad clicked something in his head, and we got engaged and then decided that we didn't want to wait, a year plus to have the big wedding. So 2 months later, we ended up eloping at the courthouse. And so we got engaged a month before I was 18. And then we got married, the month after I was 18. So very short time frame, thrown into it. Our family support that we did have was living like an hour away from us. And then all of my family I was still very distant from them. So they weren't a huge support system for us in this time. So it was still very lonely, but we figured it out. And I'll just say those first year or two was really, really rough, as you can imagine. But we didn't have a ton of money. I mean, like we were getting by. The Lord provided in every area for our needs, but we definitely weren't like the most healthy we could be. We definitely didn't have a lot of money for date nights or like quality time together because, we got married and there was no honeymoon. We went back. Everyone had a busy day because I think we got married on like a Wednesday or something. It was super random. And then everyone had stuff to do. So we like walked around the mall and went home. Um, and, we had a baby. We forgot the diaper bag. Then there was like a poop blowout at the courthouse. So that was like a fun story too. But so hopefully that gives you a clear picture of like, I did not walk into marriage coaching with like, the perfect parents that modeled this beautiful marriage for me. And like, we knew exactly what to do because we watched them. It was a wreck. And we just figured it out the hard way with like prayer guiding us.
Girl, like as I'm listening to the story, it's just like, but God, right? Like only God can take, just kind of this really hard, background, really difficult circumstances, really quick timeline, and bring something so beautiful out of it. And what I love is that, like you said, like it's not like everything has been like, picture perfect, whatever. And you're just here to say, well, this is what you should do. Like you've been there. So let's talk about this because relationships, healthy relationships take time, right? Like here on the Redeem Her Time podcast, we're always talking about what are your oranges and what are your Skittles. Your oranges are those big, juicy, really important, adding value, adding nutrients, things to our life. And relationships are one of those. And not everyone in my audience is married, right? So if you are listening today and you are single, like still listen because the principles we're going to be talking about, relate to relationships. But specifically we're talking about marriage today because that's what you're an expert in. So let's kind of talk about this because it can be really easy. I always say, like, you can tell what kind of time you're investing in something by looking at the ROTI, right? The return on time invested, the fruit, right? And so a lot of us may look at, where our relationship is and not really like it But actually, that's really good news because that means we can go back to how we're investing time in it. And so I want to kind of really pull this apart a little bit. So, one of the things that you told me as we were kind of preparing for this episode is that couples are doing things every day that actually waste time. Tell us more about that and why maybe is this a problem? And especially thinking about it from the perspective of a Christian woman who's also a business owner, right? Like she's not just, maybe sitting there waiting for her husband to walk in the door, but she's got, things that she's doing as well. So what is it that couples are doing that are is just wasting time?
Yeah, I love this question. So part of it is actually what you do, Lisa, because, or I just said your name wrong.
No
I
worries.
knew I was going to do that. I practiced saying it right.
It's all good. It's all good. I did it too, right? We're even now.
Okay. Okay. So part of it is what you do because actually, when people are wasting their time with their work, especially when they work from home, that can pour over in your marriage. A lot of times, when you're overworking because you're just busy, your spouse will actually end up having resentment towards your work or towards you from working so much because they feel like it's taking from them because it usually is in some way. And I know I've been there where I've been like that busy owner, as you say, busyness owner.
Mhm.
And I have, I really hope you can't hear my cat hissing. They are fighting each other, but Zoom's pretty good at blocking out. So,
All good.
um, so when you're being that like busyness owner, as you say, that can deplete not only your time, right? Like take time away from your spouse because you're just like rabbit trailing, doing all the million things that you probably don't need to be doing. That takes up your quality time with them, or you're taking that like late night work block because you didn't work the other times that you could have worked or should have worked. And you had said something on your free training that I really liked about how you like to end your day at 4 because that's when your husband gets home, I believe you said, so that way you can be with him. And I like to look at my work that way too. I'm constantly looking at my work blocks, I call them, as like, how do I structure this so that it doesn't interfere with my marriage? And then when I have a moment where my work pours over and it's just unavoidable, something comes up or there's extra, like it takes longer than I thought it was going to take, then what do I do to communicate to my spouse
Mm.
that I need that like extra night work block to make sure that they're on the same page. Like we come at this as a team and they don't see it as like, this is what I'm doing and it's hurting, our union, but they see it as like, okay, this is what the team needs. We need to handle this. And like they have a better attitude about it. So that's one side of it. But there's also this other side that you're actually doing with your spouse. And that's usually arguing or you're not being present. So a lot of times our phones distract us, or we're thinking about work while we're with our spouse,
Yeah.
or we're thinking about our kids, or we're thinking about that thing that the church needs us to do,
Mm.
or our to-do list, whatever it is, that's going through our mind instead of being with our spouse when we're actually with our spouse. So then we have time with our spouse, but it feels like we had no time with our spouse because all the time we were with them, we were either like busy doing something or we were busy in our mind and we
Mm.
weren't with them. And so presence, being with your spouse when you're actually with your spouse is one of the biggest things that you can do to feel like you have more time
Mm.
without actually adding any hours to your day. And the other thing is arguing because when you're arguing, again, it feels like you had no quality time together. Because if you're arguing, you're likely not feeling very good about it. And then it hurts your intimacy. It hurts the feeling of like romance and safety and teamwork. And then you leave feeling depleted. You feel like you have less energy, which I don't know if I'm sure you probably teach this in some way, and I'm sure other people have noticed this, but when you have low energy, it feels like you have no time as well because you get
Mm.
less done when you have low energy. So low energy in and of itself is a time waster because you can't show up with your full like vigor and energy and do as many things. So when we can avoid arguing, when we can avoid um, wasting our time by not being in the present moment, whether that's, electronics distracting us or our mind being busy and wandering off. When we can avoid those two things and allow our work to stay within its confinements of what's healthy for us, then we're able to feel like we have more time without actually adding additional time.
Yeah, I love this. Okay, there's so many things that my brain is like picking up on as you're talking. It really comes down to the one main question that I help women ask, and that is, what is it time for? Right? That's what I heard coming out of what you were saying, because when you've set aside that time to work, right, it is time to work. It's so interesting. I just was looking up some statistics about phones and digital distraction the other day. 52% of the time that people check their phones is during their work hours. And so it's like here we are, especially if you're, a business owner, and so like you have things to do, like, it's depending on you to make these things happen. And yet, like you said, we can, if we're not paying attention to it, we don't realize the impact this is having on, our marriage and on other relationships in our home or our health or these things outside of that time. So knowing what it's time for is always going to be key, because when I am focused on my work when it's work time, that's because I want to be able to be focused, with my in present, right? Which is that other thing that you brought is, is the multitasking, whether it's, in our hands, whether it's in our head, whether it's something that we're actually doing, we're not fully present and we're trying to be in the room, but not really in the room. Have you ever experienced that? And so like, yeah, then it's like, okay, now if I know that it's time to be with my spouse, then I am putting those things down. So I would love to just, if you have any other like tips or tools or things that can help us, be present when we're working, when we're with our spouse or with our spouse, because we're thinking about the impact it has on that relationship. Like, how do we do things that are not only going to save us time and not waste it, right? But also build into, our marriage connection. Any other thoughts or ideas that you want to share?
Yeah, so this goes back to the majority of the work that I do with couples and on myself. And that is, it all goes back to your mindset and your heart posture. And
Mm,
so a lot of what I do, usually the thing I tell couples I'm helping them with is communication, because that's what everyone wants help with. But what they don't realize is that communication first starts in your mind, and it starts with your emotions, and it starts with your heart posture. And so I like to take people to what I say is like the root of it. And that's what's going on in your mind and your heart. And scripture tells us that, um, you know, our words, our mind, our words come from our heart posture, right?
mm,
And so out of the mouth, the heart speaks, right? And so, like, we've learned that from scripture, and we know that scripture also tells us to take our thoughts captive and make them obedient to Christ. And this is one of the biggest things that will impact our marriage and our time as well. And I believe that's why you start with having people shift their mindset around that and say, what is it time for? Because it all starts with our thoughts. And so there's really two major things that I like to focus on with couples first, and that's processing emotions and shifting thoughts. And the first usually we start with the emotions piece because I'm not majorly, I mainly work with wives. And so sometimes we bring the husbands into it, but what I've found is if there's any resentment in the wife, then it usually hurts more than it helps to bring the husband into it, because then he has to listen to her, speak badly or say harsh words, and that can, hurt their intimacy outside of that session. So I like to start with the wives and tackle the emotion, because as women, we do tend to be a little more emotional than men. And I think that's a strength. I don't think that that's a weakness or a bad thing. But I also know that it's hard to handle the thoughts if you're consumed in an emotion.
mm,
So we usually do what I call the 2-minute emotional reboot, and I've put that into an acronym called the PATH, and that's to pause and name the emotion. And then that's what the P stands for, pause and name it. And then the A stands for acknowledge and accept it. So a lot of times we try to fight our emotions because if they feel like you're uncomfortable, we want to push them away, shove them down, distract from them, or sometimes we react out of them. And so, as a culture, we have been fed the lie that our emotions are a bad thing and that we should either avoid them or that we have to react out of them to get them out. which is a lie. You don't have to react out of an emotion to process it. You actually can process it in your body while you're sitting or standing perfectly still. Like your body doesn't have to move at all to let an emotion out. So the that's P and then T stands for we're going to tune into it and specifically what it feels like in our body. So
Mm.
this is where we're just naming what the physical symptoms of an emotion are. A lot of times, I think we don't realize that emotions are chemical reactions within our body, and what feels uncomfortable about them is the chemical reaction, like whatever it's causing. So it's the flushed red cheeks, the feeling of heat rising, the prickling sensation, the turning of your gut, the muscles tightening in your chest or your shoulders. That's what makes us feel really uncomfortable. And that's what we perceive as the emotion. And then the H is to help it move through. And this just means we're going to give ourselves a minute to 2 minutes, so 60 to 120 seconds to just let the emotion be there and reminding ourselves, like with our thoughts intentionally, that nothing has gone wrong. There's nothing bad happening here. It's just a chemical reaction. We're letting it happen because God made our bodies to be able to handle the full spectrum of emotion He gave us. He would not give us an emotion that He did not also make us capable of handling within our bodies. And so when we do that, that saves us so much time because I used to let my emotions drag on for hours. I could have one emotion, say it's anger, depression, anxiety, and that could ruin the whole rest of my day.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now I can handle that emotion in 2 minutes max and move on with my day and make wise decisions about how I want to think and speak to my partner, to my kids, to myself. And that has dramatically shifted all of my relationships, but especially my marriage.
Yeah, I love
And
this because you're right. I mean, what we could waste all this time, just letting this thing take over, and we do. And this is something I talk about as well, is that your busyness is not a destructive or is not a disordered calendar. It's a disordered heart first, right? So you have to take those thoughts captive, and, not let them snowball. And it's so interesting because, like you said, you can have this feeling of emotion, you can let it take the whole day, or you can say, like, I'm going to take 2 minutes and address this and acknowledge it, right? And work on it. And then I can be free of, whatever direction that would want to take me. I mean, talk about a much better use of time than letting it, kind of derail your entire day or week or month or year. I mean, it's crazy how we let things, snowball into this. So it's really apparent, right, that like doing this is not only saving us time, it's also helping us to get a better return on time invested. So, what would you say is one of the most maybe impactful things that wives can focus on if they just had to pick one thing? I always like say, like, we try to do too many things and then we scatter our focus and our time and we don't really do anything. So, if we had to narrow this down as we're winding up to one thing, what would be the most impactful thing? What would give her the most ROTI in her relationship?
yeah, it's that mindfulness piece, but even going a step deeper, it's gratitude is
Mm,
really the most impactful thing that you can focus on in your marriage, in your relationships, in everything that you do, because gratitude shifts your heart posture. So it deals with the root. It also shifts your mindset, and then your emotions follow that. And so our emotions are usually a product of what we're thinking. So if we can choose to be grateful in every moment, in every little thing that we do, and I like to say we tend to have all or nothing thinking patterns,
mm,
or something close to an all or nothing. Like we think it has to be big or small, or but it really doesn't. It just needs to be one step better than where you are right now.
mm,
And so I like to give little random examples, like thanking your husband for when he takes his shoes off, you know, and so it's like, even if he didn't take them off at the door, maybe he realized like 2 minutes into being home and you've asked him 100 times to take them off at the door, but at least he remembered, right? And so you can acknowledge that moment and be grateful for it. And that shifts your heart posture and your thinking. That gives him grace and mercy, but it also shifts his thinking to help him see you as someone who's pleasable, which is one of the things that men are wired to crave. Like they enjoy making their wife happy. They
mm.
enjoy making people happy in general, usually, but especially their wives. Like they want you to be happy. And so if they feel like you're constantly upset about something or stressed out or complaining about something, then they tend to learn this thought that is obviously a lie, but they believe that you're unpleasable. They believe that you're not, that you could never be happy. They can't make you happy. And that is what, can lead down very dark roads of marriages ending in infidelity or separation or divorce because the husband thought that the wife couldn't be pleased by him. And so, he made bad decisions out of that fear or that lie. And we can essentially like put this safeguard in our marriage just by being grateful and showing our spouse that we're grateful. It protects both persons' hearts and mindsets and allows so much like love and joy and
Mm.
peace and safety to thrive in the relationship by just acknowledging the little things and being grateful for them. And another fun like little study, that people talk about is that they did the study on gratitude that showed that there cannot be gratitude present in the mind at the same time as like anxiety. And
Mm.
so what you're doing is you're shifting things. But it actually goes on a deeper level than that because I'm very obsessed with like cycle syncing and health and hormones and fasting, like all those, little health things. And so I do a lot of research on it. And in my reading a book, I actually learned that one of our top hormones is oxytocin. And so cortisol is our stress hormone, and oxytocin is above the food chain of cortisol. So if we can trigger oxytocin, it turns off cortisol. And as women, what messes with a lot of our hormones and our cycles and our health in general is that cortisol. It's like we have elevated stress levels, whether that's from work or mismanagement of time or beliefs that we have about ourselves, our partner, our kids, our relationship to God. All of those things cause our stress to be elevated every day. And that wreaks havoc on our health and all of these little things that are affected by that. And so, if we can tap into that oxytocin, which is the love chemical, then we can essentially turn that off, stop that pattern, and it just solves so many of the little issues that we're having. And we do that by hugging more, by being grateful, by, physical touch and the other love languages. And so it's just a powerful tool. And when you dig into the science of it, there's so much to back it. But I think we've heard it too many times that we get comfortable hearing be grateful, and then we don't actually go into our lives and practice it consistently.
Yeah, but when you look at the fruit, right, the roadie of that time, and it doesn't take much time to be grateful. Like it can just literally be a couple seconds to like express this gratitude, whether, to yourself, to the Lord, to your spouse. Like it does have a ripple effect and it does have a good return on time invested. And so I love that one really simple thing that I want to encourage our listeners today is like, how can you start just taking little moments? We're not even talking minutes, like moments of gratitude and see what kind of roadie that produces. So, girl, we could talk all day because, of course, there's so many different layers and elements and, things like that around relationships and all of that. So, we will continue the conversation over inside the Redeem Her Time community where I invite all of our listeners to come over and bring your questions for our guests and come and share about what you're wanting to implement from this conversation because if it's just more information right it's not going to do any good in our marriages or in our businesses or any area of life but where else could people find you or is there a good resource that you have that would be a good next step for somebody who wants to really grow in this area?
Yes, absolutely. So, you can continue the conversation with me on my podcast, the United Christian Marriage Podcast, and you'll find all of my links there as well for my Facebook community and my Bible study group. But I do have a freebie for your listeners as well. So it's a free guide for wives, and they can learn the three main aspects of reviving your marriage or like increasing that intimacy, connection, and communication. And so it walks you through those three steps. It's very digestible. It has like places for you to fill in your answers. So again, you're not just learning something, you're actually getting that transformation and that journaling done. And then I actually am doing 5-day one-on-one challenges right now. So you can just grab the guide if you want, or you can grab one of those challenges with me. And then I walk you through the guide. So instead of you just having to read it yourself, you get some of that feedback on your answers, and that can be so dramatically helpful to just get you out of those thinking patterns that are keeping you stuck and push you forward into that marriage that you're really dreaming of having. So,
Yeah. Oh, I love it. We'll make sure to link to that in the show notes. So definitely go grab the guide. And yes, I agree. Like having someone to help walk you through things so you don't just A, let it sit in your inbox, or B, let it even, you maybe even print it out or download it, but don't really take the time to really think about it and implement. It's not going to do you any good. So this is how everything comes down to time, you guys, especially when you've got a great resource like what's being offered to you today. So yeah, make sure that you go and grab it in the show notes. Come on over to the community at redeemhertime.com/community and join our conversation over there. And, I just want to say thank you for being with us today and sharing your journey and how you're helping women, in this area of their life. I always love to end with this question. As you're kind of thinking about the season that you're in, what is it time for? Whether that's in life or business, like what do you feel like God is calling you to invest time in right now? And what kind of ROTI, return on time invested, are you expectant of?
yeah. For me, it's been really making sure that I'm present with my kids during the day without falling into the extreme of feeling like I need to just go all in on one or the other.
Mm,
I too struggle with the all or nothing thinking. So for me, it's been finding that balance, which I know balance is kind of a buzzword, and they say there really is no balance, but there is a balance in some sense that I'm chasing of like being in work when it's time for work and being with my kids when it's time for kids, and then being with my husband when he's home. And we've all been assessing, obviously, the little kids, we're kind of doing that for them, but we're all assessing if we're using the most of our time
mm.
with that most investment, like you like to talk about it, because electronics, poor decisions and when you're eating or like, snacking all the time, like those little things add up into stealing our time. And that's how me and you find each other. It's just, I've been really intentional about that lately because I feel God calling me to other things, like speaking at summits, writing a book, other things. And if I don't get that balance right, then I won't be able to pour into those other areas that He's calling me to.
Yeah, I love it. I love how it's all connected and it all comes back to number one, you have time. And number two, what is it time for? So I love that we're continuing to ask that question. And I encourage our listeners to, yeah, pay attention right now. Who do you need to be present to? And then put everything else away for that time because you will see way more fruit from that time without adding more hours. So I love this conversation. Thank you so much for being here today. And we'll see you guys over inside the community.